Part 2. Moved to the Hanlin Academy's residence. Has he moved into the Hanlin Academy's residence? In the Imperial study room, Xia Linxuan looked at the memorial in front of him. But his mind had already flown to nowhere. Xiao Beiji was stunned for a moment, then realized that Xia Linxuan was talking about Pu Qiutai, and quickly said with a smile, "I guess not yet." How long did it take for the emperor to come back? Mr. Pu has to clean up no matter what he does, doesn't he? Before he finished speaking, Xia Linxuan snorted coldly and said, "Get rid of it. He is the best at procrastination. Send someone to keep an eye on him. I want him to move there tonight." Xiao Beiji was startled. He didn't understand why the emperor suddenly acted so resolutely. It's obviously not a major political matter, it's just a matter of a minister, or a matter of accommodation for a surrendered minister. I remember that during the draft, concubine Wei was so stunning that the emperor liked her. The empress suggested that she enter the palace early. The emperor was not in such a hurry, so he allowed concubine Wei to follow the rules and enter the palace 10 days later. It has been almost 3 years now, and I have only been granted the status of a nobleman. Xiao Beiji was thinking as he walked, with a narrow smile on his lips. He thought that it was fortunate that Mr. Pu was just a minister. If he were really a concubine in the harem, seeing how anxious the emperor was, he would probably be able to climb to the position of concubine in less than a year. Come on, Tusk. Tusk. What a pity. It's a pity that Mr. Pu is a man. And the emperor doesn't seem to be interested in male sex. After the boy went out to find someone to do something, he returned to the imperial study, only to see that Xia Linxuan had thrown down the memorial and was tapping his fingers lightly on the table. Seeing that Xiao Beiji was back, he stood up and said, "Go and get the book from the treasury of the Ministry of Internal Affairs." That is to say, Xiao Beiji has been with this master for a long time. Even so, the youngest internal manager in history also had his mouth wide open. He even forgot his manners and just stared at Xia Linxuan with only one thought in his mind: is this really the emperor? Could it be someone pretending to be someone? Oh, my God, this is so exciting. God, please don't make such a joke. Xia Linxuan looked at Xiao Beiji's dazed look, and probably realized that he was a little out of sorts today. He couldn't help but said angrily, "What are you doing standing still? I asked you to get the booklet from the treasury of the Ministry of Internal Affairs. Are you deaf? Why don't you go quickly? The conscience of heaven and earth, it's not that he, the Xiao Beiji, doesn't have the spirit of gossip, but he dares not have it when the emperor is in such a state." So, Xiao Beiji went out and gave orders. After a while, he saw more than 20 little eunuchs walking over carrying more than a dozen large boxes. A huge sandalwood box was placed in the center of the ground. A eunuch headed by him reported, replying to the emperor, "These are all the account books in Tianji Noa warehouse. Because the things are the most valuable, they are all stored in sandalwood boxes." After a while, there are also more than 20 boxes of account books in Tianji no B warehouse. Having said this, the eunuch secretly glanced at the expressionless emperor sitting on the dragon chair. And after a long while he said, "Your Majesty, do you want to see the things in other warehouses? Tianji no C and Tianji no with the number D plus the warehouse number A, B, C and D. There are at least 150 or 60 boxes in this account book." The last thing the eunuch didn't dare to say was, "Your Majesty, have you finished reading?" Xia Linxuan knew that he was very rich. In the past 3 years since the destruction of Daqing, although the treasury of the Ministry of Revenue was a little tight, his inner court treasury had always been very full, because the most important trade and commerce were in his hands. There are officials who are talented in business to help him manage the Ministry of Internal Affairs. But he didn't expect that he would be so rich. There were nearly 200 boxes of account books in warehouse number 8. How many treasures must have been accumulated? It all comes down to the achievements accumulated by the Qing dynasty over hundreds of years. For some reason, he remembered the thin and slender figure standing stubbornly under the plum tree. Xia Linxuan's eyes softened, and he said calmly, "There is no need to bring it over again. Why are there so many things?" The eunuch quickly laughed and said, "Your Majesty, you don't know. The royal family of our Daming Empire originally had many good things. The Qing dynasty had a vast territory, and Zhongnan, a paradise on earth, was extremely wealthy. Even if the emperor rewarded the soldiers of the 3 armies, the dear adults, the fabrics, antiques, gold, jade, jewelry, and Western curios still occupy 4 large warehouses. This is because the Ministry of Internal Affairs has expanded 8 warehouses, otherwise it will not be able to fit in. With the current foreign missions, there are more and more congratulations from my ministers. And this year the Ministry of Internal Affairs will build 8 more large warehouses." Xia Linxuan listened with great interest. Although he was an emperor and rich all over the world, he was also an ordinary person. He was naturally happy to hear that his wealth was so rich. "Because I let Xiao Beiji flip through a few account books at will, and after reading them carefully, I felt even more proud. Take out a sable fur cloak, a white mink fur cloak, and a high-quality firefox fur cloak from the mink fur. Also, take out this glass Kong screen. Well, take out this jade cabbage and other antiques. Take out some ornaments." Xia Linxuan ordered in an orderly manner, but the eunuch of the Ministry of Internal Affairs was confused. He thought that this was not a new year and a festival. Could it be that the emperor was happy and wanted to reward you all again? My God, I really don't know who will get these rewards. These are all good things. As for the sable fur, except for the Queen Mother and a few high-ranking concubines, I have never heard of anyone receiving it. The eunuch here was secretly wondering. Xiao Beiji listened there for a while, but he got a clue. "Your Majesty, is this all prepared for Mr. Pu?" He watched Xia Linxuan keep talking. And several young eunuchs in the middle of the floor kept kneeling and taking notes. The more he listened, the more dumbfounded he became. He secretly wondered how big the residence in Mr. Pu's government office could be. The emperor has obtained so many things, can they be stuffed in? Finally, after a while, Xia Linxuan estimated that he had enough things. So he put the book down and said calmly, "That's all for now." The leading eunuch of the Ministry of Internal Affairs was also really curious. And he did not dare to ask the emperor directly, "Who do you want to reward?" He was smart enough, and asked with a smile, "Your Majesty, I don't know which empress or master these things are going to be sent to. Please tell me. And I can have the Ministry of Internal Affairs directly register them and distribute them." "Nonsense." Xia Linxuan glared at the eunuch coldly. "You carry everything here. The rest is none of your business." "Yes." The eunuch was startled. He didn't expect that the emperor would not play his cards according to the rules. Although he was unwilling to do so, he did not dare to ask any more questions and had to retreat depressedly. Here Xiao Beiji took a look at Xia Linxuan's face and saw that there was a hint of a smile on that stern face. It was obvious that the emperor was in a good mood. So, he laughed along and said, "The emperor wants to give these things to Mr. Pu? It's just that there are so many things that I'm afraid I can't fit them in the residence of the government office." Xia Linxuan really didn't think about this problem. After pondering for a while, he waved his hand arrogantly and said, "Is there only one room in the Hanlin Academy's residence?" If not, the other rooms will be opened, and no one will live in it anyway. Xiao Beiji thought about how generous he was. Sure enough, this talented person was taking advantage. Mr. Pu just read a few lines of poetry. According to the emperor's intention, the poem was still very disrespectful. What was the result? Not only did he get these many things, but the emperor also opened the entire government office to him. Not to mention the history of our daimyo empire. Even from ancient times to the present, there has never been such an honor for ministers, right? Just as he was thinking about it, he saw Xia Linxuan stood up excitedly and smiled at Xiao Beiji. After being busy for a while, the sun has gone to the west. Maybe Pu Qiutai has moved here too. Come on. Let's go and congratulate him on his move. Poor Xiao Beiji experienced several such sudden blows throughout the day, and he almost went crazy. Fortunately, his concentration had been trained, and he only opened his mouth for a while before he agreed. When he went out, he saw dozens of young eunuchs sent by the Ministry of Internal Affairs, carrying many things. So, he stepped forward, flicked his fly whisk and said, "Okay, just wait here and follow the emperor later." Dozens of little eunuchs were stunned for a moment, and had no choice but to put down their things. They all complained secretly in their hearts, thinking how long would it take to wait for the emperor's honor guard in this cold weather. Just when he thought of this, he saw Xia Linxuan walking out accompanied by several guards. Let's talk about Pu Qiutai. No matter how unwilling he is, but the imperial edict has been issued, he does not dare to resist it. What's even more hateful is that Xia Linxuan didn't know whether he was afraid of him running away or resisting the order, so he sent a group of imperial guards to help him. But in fact they were to monitor and urge him to move as soon as possible. At this time, even if Pu Qiutai deliberately delayed, he was powerless. He could only watch those big men transform into wolves and tigers, and in less than a moment, they moved everything in his small house. "Master, let's go, this matter." Shuangxi sighed, walked to Pu Qiutai, held his thin arm, and felt like tears were about to fall. "What are all this for? The emperor cannot force people like this. Ever since the young master was forced to become an official, look how thin he has become. Isn't this enough? Now the young master is asked to move to the Hanlin Academy's residence." "Where is that?" "Hanlin Academy, a close minister of the emperor. You are already despised by people for serving as the imperial minister with a false reputation. If you go to the Hanlin Academy again, what will the scholars in the world think of him? Is that emperor determined to force the young master to death?" Because of the anger in his chest, Shuangxi didn't feel any joy at all about moving to a new home. He supported Pu Qiutai and slowly arrived at his residence in the Imperial Academy. Along the way, there were people who were looking sideways and talking. Everyone's eyes revealed surprise and curiosity, as well as those who had no clue. Unconcealed envy, jealousy, and hatred. Pu Qiutai seemed to have not seen these gazes at all. He was already numb. From the day he was forced to become an official, he suffered from conscience condemnation and suffering all the time. Up to now, this heart can no longer bear any more. Even if greater humiliation comes, it is nothing more than this. How can a dead heart still feel? When we arrived at the government office of the Hanlin Academy, the director had already heard about this incident and quickly sent a few people to help clean it up. Pu Qiutai didn't have many things. Apart from bedding and clothes, he only had a flower pot he brought from the south of the Yangtze River, and some pens, inks, paper and inkstones, which he was used to using on a daily basis, so he brought them with him when he went north to Beijing. There was originally a young plum blossom in the flower pot, But the weather in the north is very different from that in the south of the Yangtze River. The plum blossoms grew in the south of the Yangtze River, and they seem to have some of the delicate spirit of the south of the Yangtze River. They froze to death within a few days after arriving in the north. This is just at home in my hometown. Pu Qiutai was reluctant to throw away the things he had bought, so he still kept them in the house. Young master hasn't eaten lunch. Why don't you go out and see what's available and bring some to master? After the simple arrangements were made, Shuangxi approached Pu Qiutai and asked him in a low voice, but saw him shaking his head and saying calmly, "Don't bother, I can't eat it anyway." At this point, he looked at Shuangxi, smiled slightly and said, "Don't worry, I'm fine, don't worry about me. If you are hungry, just go out and see if you can find something to eat. It's just that at this time, it's difficult." Shuangxi was just about to say that he wasn't hungry either when he heard a loud voice singing from outside, "The emperor has arrived." Pu Qiutai trembled. Shuangxi was beside him, and he clearly saw a flash of panic in his master's eyes, but then his eyes returned to as clear as a pool, and then he slowly stood up and walked to the door, kneeling straight down. No matter how stubborn and unyielding he is, the master is still afraid in his heart, right? Shuangxi sighed and thought to himself, "That's right, can I not be afraid?" That was the emperor, the 95-year-old man who stood high above the throne and held the power of life and death for everyone in the world. With just a few words, he easily shattered the young master's half-life persistence. More importantly, the lives and deaths of the young master's relatives were in the hands of this man. "Get up, Pu Qiutai. This is the second time we met today." Xia Linxuan walked in, held Pu Qiutai up in high spirits, and carefully looked at his face and body. After a long while, he chuckled softly, "You are really too thin. It's a pity that this handsome face, if it were slightly plumper, I'm afraid that I don't know how many boudoir girls will be fascinated by you." Pu Qiutai lowered her eyes and remained silent. But Xia Linxuan had probably experienced it once, so he was not surprised by his silence. After thinking about it, he asked curiously, "Aiqing, are you married?" Pu Qiutai immediately became wary. He has had enough of the emperor's persecution. Does the other party want to use marriage to completely tie him down? Thinking of this, he quickly bowed and said, "Back to the emperor. When I was born, there was a dark cloud. An expert once said that my life was a sin of evil. I had no wife and no children. Even if I was forced to get married, it would be nothing more. It was a man who took a woman's life." There seemed to be a strange light flashing in Xia Linxuan's eyes. As smart as he was, how could he not know that Pu Qiutai was afraid that he would grant him a marriage, so he had blocked all escape routes in advance? It's just, how dare he use this reason? "Oh, are you forcing me to tease him?" Since he had dug the hole by himself, it would have been wasted if I didn't force him to jump in. Xia Linxuan thought with evil intentions. In the conscience of heaven and earth, he just asked casually and never really thought about granting Pu Qiutai a marriage. This man dared to misunderstand him and block his way out. The dignified emperor snorted in his heart, but the smile on his face became brighter. He patted Pu Qiutai on the shoulder and said, "Really? A life without a wife and children is really pitiful. But it doesn't matter. There are only women in this world, isn't there a man? If it's a man, it shouldn't matter, right?" Men's fashion was prevalent in the daimyo empire. And I heard that it was not uncommon for men to have wives and concubines among the people. However, the Daqing dynasty was very strict about etiquette. Although there were some cases of having sex with actors and hustlers, they were not allowed to appear in elegant halls, and people would never discuss such things. So, Pu Qiutai was stunned for a while before he understood what Xia Linxuan meant. His fair face turned red instantly. He pursed his lips and said coldly, "Is the emperor joking?" "That's right. I'm just joking." Xia Linxuan couldn't help but feel happy when he saw that Pu Qiutai was annoyed, especially the expression on this beautiful man's face when he was just stunned. He blinked his big eyes twice in confusion, and his long eyelashes were trembling. "Oh, it's really pleasing to look at, and it will make you feel happy even if you are in a bad mood." Pu Qiutai stared at this evil man with a cheerful smile and clearly heard the sound of his own teeth grinding. "My dear, I have nothing to do in the palace. So I came here to sit with you and congratulate you on your move to a new house." Xia Linxuan shamelessly took Pu Qiutai's arm and walked around the room with a familiar attitude. He looked at this relatively exquisite dormitory together. "Your Majesty, there are still a dozen unread memorials in your south study room." Xiao Beiji couldn't help but curse in his heart. From the corner of his eye, he saw Pu Qiutai angrily trying to break free from the emperor's arm. Unfortunately, with his little body thinner than a fox, as long as Xia Linxuan didn't want to let go, what could he do? "Can you earn it, Xiao Beiji?" Just as he was thinking about it, he suddenly heard Xia Linxuan shouting. And Xiao Beiji quickly straightened his chest and agreed. Xia Linxuan said calmly, "You are right. This room is indeed too small. Even the things I brought can't be placed. Let them put the bulky furniture in other rooms first and open up these rooms, give it a good repair." After speaking, he looked at Pu Qiutai's thin body and said seriously, "I went to the ground twice. Qiutai is from the south and must be afraid of the cold. It's not enough to light a few braziers in this house." Pu Qiutai didn't notice that in just a moment. Xia Linxuan's name for him changed from Pu Qiutai to Qiutai. His whole body seemed to have been struck by lightning, and he was really burnt on the outside and tender on the inside. "Your Majesty, is there someone slandering you in front of you, saying that I was your father-killing enemy in my previous life?" Pu Qiutai gritted her teeth and asked seriously. He really didn't understand how much hatred he had with this emperor. The other party is almost as if he is afraid that the world will not know that he is the emperor's favorite. He is using one method after another, and he is simply perfecting the trick of flattering and killing. Qiutai, can you also joke?" Xia Linxuan laughed heartily and said proudly in his heart, "Do you cherish your homeland? Do you still regard that damn emperor as the only emperor in your heart? Are you going to serve against your will? Just want to hang out in a false position and wait to die? Pooh! It also depends on whether I am happy to help you or not. How? I just want to tell the world that you are the emperor's favorite minister, and your grace and favor are unparalleled. I want to see how those scholars who once looked up to you will face you without you as their spiritual leader. Can you always hold on to the temptation of a bright future? Your Majesty knows that I am not joking." Pu Qiutai suddenly emphasized his tone. A sarcastic smile appeared on Xia Linxuan's lips, but it was fleeting. Then he turned around to face Pu Qiutai with a very sincere smile and said, "Qiutai, I know what you think of me, but I don't care. I am worthy of the people of heaven and earth. As long as the people agree with me, it doesn't matter whether you nerds agree or not. What does it matter? As the sages say, the people are more important than the king. In front of the people, I am not an emperor, let alone scholars like you." At this point, his eyes suddenly became deep, and he said solemnly, "I have always thought like this until I saw you. Tisk, tisk. The poor man is thinner than a yellow flower, but it is in you that I really see that this person is thinner than a yellow flower. Thin mood, I think you scholars are also pitiful. I am the emperor, and my mind should be as broad as the world. How can you hold grudges because you scholars are disrespectful to me? So, I have decided that starting from next year, for 3 consecutive years, The court will decide whether it is necessary to use Enka to recruit scholars, especially in the Jiangnan area. The prosperity of a country cannot be separated from talents. Jiangnan has always been a beautiful place with the most famous people. What's more, the daimyo empire also had some inappropriate actions in Jiangnan at first. Therefore, in the past 3 years, Enka, mainly the Jiangnan scholars, I will compensate you well. Pu Qiutai looked at Xia Linxuan expressionlessly. If his body hadn't been trembling slightly, the young emperor would have thought that the young man in front of him was hopeless and despairing. That would undoubtedly be a lot less fun. However, from the trembling body, he knew that Pu Qiutai was not as indifferent in his heart as he showed, so the emperor stepped forward, looked down slightly at the thin talented man who only reached his chin, and pretended to be confused. What? Is your love cold? You are wearing so little, no wonder you feel cold. Come on, try on the mink fur I gave you. As he said this, he reached out to untie the straps of Pu Qiutai's cloak. Shuangxi gasped at the side, and Pu Qiutai's pretended calm expression was shattered. He looked at Xia Linxuan in shock, then stretched out his hand to grab his cloak, and said angrily, I can't bear such grace from the emperor. Why can't you bear it? You are the leader of the world's scholars. If you can't bear it, who can? Xia Linxuan smiled sarcastically. I am called Corporal Li Shen, do you understand? Seeing the two men looking at each other like cockfighters, Xiao Beiji felt miserable. He quickly led a little eunuch who held the 3 cloaks over and said to Pu Qiutai with an apologetic smile, Mr. Pu, the emperor is full of love. Talented, no, I have given you 3 fur coats, which are much warmer than what you are wearing. And since they are the old lady's needlework, wouldn't it be a pity that it would get damaged due to frequent wear? Pu Qiutai's chest rose and fell violently. Xia Linxuan raised his eyebrows and looked at him coldly, still holding the cloak strap in his hand. After a long while, he saw the beautiful young man opposite him helplessly closing his eyes and said softly, My lord, thank you for your kindness. Xia Linxuan smiled with satisfaction, reached out and pulled off the belt, and took off the old cloak that Pu Qiutai was wearing, and threw it to Shuangxi. Then he personally picked up the sable fur cloak and put it on Pu Qiutai's body. This time Xia Linxuan gave a lot of things, because several rooms in the Hanlin Academy had to be opened up. Pu Qiutai was temporarily moved to a residence in the cabinet.